يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another session of Let's Talk, and as always very diverse topics that we'll be covering on the show this morning. We're going to be looking at the seminar coming up, Shariah Estate and Financial Planning, which is being put on by Awqaf Foundation. So we'll talk to them about that seminar and who should be attending. We also will talk to Marian Hammon. She's the author of a book called As the Crow Flies. But first up, we're going to be looking at a rare disease. The 28th of February saw World Rare Diseases Day. Unfortunately, with a lot of planning in place, we couldn't talk about rare diseases on the 28th of February, but we are here to talk about it now. And there's just not one rare disease. We know that there are a whole host of rare diseases, one of them being Pompe disease. We have a mother and her son, darling little boy called Zain. It's Raeesa Bulbulia Cajee in studio with us with her little baby. He's 2 years old. His name is Zeinoul Cajee, and they're here to talk about Zain's rare disease. It's called a Pompe disease. Assalamu alaikum, Raeesa.
Wa alaikum salam.
Lovely to have you in studio. And assalamu alaikum, Zain.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, Zain's here, and the reason we have you in studio obviously is because he has a rare disease.
Yes.
And we want to talk about it, we want to create awareness, and we want to give hope to other parents who find themselves in a situation like yourself. But I also understand that tomorrow, the 15th of April, is
World Pompe's Day.
World Pompe's Day.
Yes.
Zain is 2 years old. You got married like every young couple. Dreams, wishes, aspirations of a wonderful family, a healthy family, and do everything that any and every other couple would do and plan for.
Absolutely.
You were in for a very rude shock.
Yes.
What happened when he was born? Did you realize at the time that Zain was not okay?
So Zain was born early. He was born at 35 weeks. My pregnancy was very well followed up with. My pregnancy was very... I'm going to dismantle your set. There we go. My pregnancy was very well managed or looked after because I'd lost my previous pregnancy quite late. So I'd been to fetal specialists, and Zain and I decided to come early. So there was nothing picked up before he was born. He came at 35 weeks. He was in the ICU for a few days, and we'd gone home. And Zain was doing okay. Around 3 months or so, I, as an occupational therapist, didn't feel he was strong enough. Took him to the ped a few times actually, and we'd had some feeding-related issues, weight gain issues. We'd stopped breastfeeding.
Not gaining weight.
Not gaining weight.
What are the exact signs that you picked up to indicate to you that something's amiss here?
So the biggest thing that I was worried about for Zain was the physical development. I'd felt that he wasn't strong enough, and I was doing what I would do with kids that would come through to my practice, and I thought he just isn't strong enough. Taken him to my pediatrician a few times, was kind of overlooked. I took him myself to a physiotherapist, started some more exercises, and again it was overlooked.
How come nothing was picked up at that point in time? And I know you and Mohammed and the family, the support groups, have done you have done so much research, you could actually become a specialist of this condition called Pompe disease.
Absolutely. So the signs and symptoms of Pompe's disease, especially the type that Zain has. So Zain has a type of Pompe's disease called classic infantile Pompe's disease. It's the most severe type. The onset or the start of the disease is early on in life, and you want to pick it up early. Zain was picked up at 7.5 months. He only started treatment at 8 months. And by the time Zain was diagnosed, he was already in severe heart failure.
Do you think that if he was diagnosed early on, maybe at birth or just a little after, that the outcome would have been slightly different?
Absolutely.
Or perhaps more positive?
Absolutely. So what Pompe's disease is, it's a buildup of glycogen. So when you eat sugar, you tend to break down the glycogen and store it in your body for energy, in your muscles, in your heart, and most of your body is made up of muscles, and in the rest of your body. And what happens is you excessively store the glycogen because he's missing the enzyme to break down that glycogen. So his heart excessively stored the glycogen, his respiratory muscles, his body muscles, and that was explaining the weakness that we were seeing. So we want to get intervention early. So what happened with Zain, for example, is we only started treatment at 8 months. And because we started treatment at 8 months, we have an 8-month period where his muscles, his heart was severely damaged because of the later diagnosis. And because he had the late infusion so late, or started out so late, we now had to clear the buildup of glycogen that he had now produced over 8 months. And then we then have to keep going to clear the buildup of glycogen. So what Zain needs is he has infusions every 2 weeks. If he had infusions earlier, so say at 2 months or from birth, we wouldn't have the damage from the glycogen buildup.
How does that make you feel, you and Mohammed as parents? And I know it's Allah's will, you know, everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
And there's a time and a place and a reason for everything happening. But I can't help wondering if there isn't disappointment and anger on your part for the doctors not having diagnosed him early enough.
That's it. So I think for me as a mum, I was told very often, stop being paranoid, just be a mum. Or stop being an OT, be a mum. And there was something wrong. And it wasn't just something little, it was something so big. And he'd actually got sick. It was in Ramadan, and he picked up a flu. It was after Ramadan, he picked up a flu, and we ended up in the hospital, and we'd gone back, and he wouldn't stop coughing. And then eventually we got to a point where we had to do a chest x-ray, and they saw the enlarged heart. And the thought often goes through my mind, I should have pushed harder. I should have gone to somebody else. I should have fought harder. But we can't do that. And if I look at how things fell into place, and you said there's a time and place for everything, and I am a firm believer in that. I think from knowing Kelly Duplessis from Rare Disease, I used to see her son for therapy, to how things fell into place so easily once he was diagnosed.
Just for the benefit of our viewers, I have talked with Kelly previously, last year sometime, about rare diseases. She has an amazing story, has she not? Because I'm sure in your deepest, darkest moments of despair, when Zain is sick, and we're going to talk about all his hospitalization, you kind of almost feel to give up. You know, you just reach such a dark place.
That's it.
What does Kelly's story do for you? Share that with our viewers.
So Kelly's story is personal in many ways for me, because I used to see her son for therapy.
That was quite a coincidence, isn't it?
Absolutely. And considering it's so rare, you know, there are 5 other children with Pompe's disease. So you think it is very rare. So how is it that I happened to see her son? And I remember the day our doctor walked in and he said, what's happening is, have you heard of Pompe's disease? And I said, yes. And he looked at me and he said, really? And I said, I see a little boy for Pompe's disease. And he said, you need to walk out and go and call his mum. And from that day, Kelly has been an incredible support.
Okay, let's stop there. We're going to go for an ad break. I see Zain's very tired. His foy is outside, and she's going to now take care of him whilst we continue this interview, inshallah. But just before he goes out, do you want to show that machine up, or can the camera just focus on that machine, and then Raeesa, you'll talk to us after the ad break, inshallah. Okay, we need to take a little break to let Zain go out and spend some time with his foy, whilst Mom, Anisha Bulbulia, pardon, not Anisha, that's her mom, Raeesa Bulbulia Cajee, talks to us about Zain's condition. It's a very rare condition. It's called Pompe Disease, and I understand only 5 other children in the country have this disease, so lots more coming up after the ad break.
Is it troubling you?
We're talking rare diseases, and coincidentally tomorrow sees the World Pompe Disease Awareness Day, and that's exactly what we're talking about this morning with Raeesa Bulbulia Cajee. She has a 2-year-old son. His name is Zain. He's one of 5 children only in South Africa suffering from this disease. Raeesa, back to you. And before we talk about the disease in more detail, we were still talking about Kelly Stradham and her son. What a coincidence that her son came to you for physio.
Yes, yeah. So he had seen me he'd come to our school where our support center is, and I picked up therapy with him just for a few months. And, you know, there's certain moments that become quite memorable. And I remember I was doing my handover with my therapist because I was going to be on maternity leave. And we were walking down the passage, and I'd put my hand on my tummy, and I'd looked at his picture on the wall. And his picture was on the wall because there's a child who could have medical-related issues at school, so everyone needs to know what to do. And I remember looking at a colleague of mine, and I put my hand on my very pregnant belly, and I said, you know, I think of this family, and I can't imagine what they have to go through on a daily basis. And more than thinking of Jean, I actually thought of his mum, Kelly. So when our doctor told me to give her a call, I'd called her, and she'd said, I said, they're thinking my son is Pompe disease. And she'd said, no, are you sure? And I said, yes, this is the doctor who it is. And she'd said, okay, I'll see you the next day. And she drove up. She's now staying in Hartbeespoort. She drove up the next day, and everything thereafter just fell into place. Mm-hmm. The rare disease community, I mean, in terms of Pompe disease, is very small because there's such a few number of diagnosed patients in South Africa. So the community is very supportive of each other in terms of everything that happens. And we have had a few hiccups along the way in terms of Zain having some long hospitalizations. And sometimes the road can be dark.
And I should imagine when he has these long hospital stays, your life is on hold.
Yes.
Your life and Mohammed's life as a family. But I do know you have an amazing support structure, your mom, your Kala, your in-laws.
Absolutely.
I mean, it wasn't for them, I guess you truly remain in that dark place.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, you underestimate the support that you need. And you know, they say you need a village to raise a child.
Oh, true.
And for a child with special needs and special care, that is so important. And it's the support from your family, and that gives you the sense of normality in your life, because it can become very consuming, especially when it's times that are more challenging or more difficult.
Now, you spoke about, before the outbreak, we spoke about the frustration and the disappointment that doctors were not able to diagnose Zain as early as possible. We understand now why they were not able to do it, because it is such a rare disease.
That's it.
And I guess you didn't have Pompe disease top of the mind.
That's it.
To go to the right doctor at the time.
Yes.
What's your daily routine look like when Zain is having a good day? And how many good days does he have in a week?
Okay, so our days are busy because Zain's disease has affected a lot of his body. So our week includes 2 physiotherapy sessions, an occupational therapy session, a speech therapy session, a feeding therapy session, and then every month we also see a dietitian to help us with his weight gain. So our weeks become really busy. Every second week we have infusions where he's got to go in to get the enzyme to replace the enzyme that he's missing to help break down the glycogen. So we have to plan our lives around his therapy and his therapy intervention. Other than that, we try to keep his life as normal as we can for a little 2-year-old boy, whether it's going to the park, going to the zoo, and exposing him to as much as we can, because his body may be challenged, but his mind is intact. So he still wants to do everything a 2-year-old wants to do. They want to play, they want to be exposed to new things, Zain at the moment loves his cars and painting and drawing. So encouraging those kind of activities as best as we can within the limitations that we also have. Because in January this year, Zain had a trachea put in, which is the little hole in his throat to support his breathing. And that on its own comes with a few limitations in terms of where we can take him to and how long he can be off the humidifier and those kind of challenges.
What about other children? I mean, I think of my grandkids who are attending birthday parties every week without fail, or they play dates and sleepovers, etc. Is that ruled out completely in Zain's life?
So we've been advised to minimize the risk of infection. And unfortunately, kids carry a lot of germs.
Oh, of course.
So we do need to build Zane's immunity, but at the same time, we do need to take precautions. So we won't take Zane to places that have lots and lots of people, that are confined spaces where he's likely to pick up infections. Like I said, we have very supportive friends and family. So our friends and family go above and beyond to be inclusive. And that's important for us because I find, and when you talk to other families who've got children with different needs or special needs, they can become very isolated. And our friends and family have made the effort to be or consider us and be inclusive. Zane has been to 2 birthday parties.
Oh, wow.
And he loves it. And he loves the social interaction that he has, seeing the other kids and engaging in those activities.
What about his milestones, Raeesa? I know you are an occupational therapist and you have a very keen eye for all of these things. How far behind is he in reaching his milestones and also prognosis, future?
Okay.
What have you been told? What have you researched? What are you aware of?
In terms of prognosis, when Zane was diagnosed when he was 7.5 months, things really didn't look good. He was in acute heart failure. The diagnosis was late, and if they're not diagnosed early, children with classic infantile disease often pass away by a year. Zane was already 8 months. We hadn't had any infusions yet. Things looked really gloomy. Where we are now, Zane's heart is back to normal.
Alhamdulillah.
So our doctors feel that was remarkable. We have faith, we have hope, and we do everything we can. You know, we got his first birthday, and that was incredibly emotional. We spent his second birthday in the ICU. That was even more difficult.
I'm sure.
So we don't look too far down the line. We really celebrate each day, each milestone as they come. And when I say each milestone, we look at the little things that for other people may be so incredibly small, but for us can be so big. I mentioned something small like Zane goes for feeding therapy. We had an incident where he aspirated, he choked really badly. And because of that, we had to put in a feeding tube so that he's not at risk of choking. So he does eat orally and he does drink orally, but most of his nutrition is done through the feeding tube. And he tries so hard. This week he managed to eat almost a full meal independently without the feeding tube orally. And that was a big milestone for us.
Absolutely.
He's 2 years old. He's just getting into crawling at the moment. And that comes with a lot of hard work. It's practice every day. It's the physiotherapy, it's the occupational therapy that we have to do.
Must be very exhausting, but it's the effort you're putting in.
That's it.
For the love of your child.
And rewarding.
Absolutely.
So rewarding.
Before the ad break, there was, for me, what looked like possibly an oxygen case.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So that is actually a portable ventilator.
Okay.
So what it is Zane used to be on oxygen, just a low dose of oxygen to help support his breathing. He doesn't necessarily have breathing related issues, so he can breathe independently. In November last year, we picked up a common cold and his left lung collapsed. And then we tried everything and nothing could get the lung back up. So we had to do the tracheostomy, and it's attached to that machine that gives him pressure to keep the lung open. So he still breathes independently. That machine doesn't provide oxygen. It uses normal room air.
Ah, okay.
So it just keeps his lung open. We're hoping that is temporary.
Inshallah.
And he's doing well.
Shukr.
That for us was a big decision to make. We did not want to go down that route. And we did. And it's been the best thing that we have done. He is a different child with so much more energy since we had done that.
Let's talk about Kelly, the foundation she started up. I should imagine it fills a very big part in your life as well. And support groups, how important are they? Do you and Mohammed attend? Yes.
So Kelly started Rare Diseases South Africa because she felt the need for support for patients with rare diseases when her son was diagnosed. So Rare Diseases really fills a gap that is so severely needed, as well as creating so much awareness. Support becomes important. As I said, this is a big part of our lives, as many people whose children become a big part of their lives. But you do need the support. So Mohammed and I have started attending a support group. It's a support group for parents who have children with chronic illnesses, as well as parents who have lost children. We haven't been for many yet, we've just started. And that on its own has been very beneficial.
It's a big step, isn't it?
It is.
Because you're going to hear things you don't possibly want to hear.
That's it. And you almost sit there and you say, okay, there are people who have it so much more difficult, but at the same time, there are people who have it so much easier. And it almost puts your life into perspective, because I think when things like this happen, you feel, oh my goodness, this has happened to me. But you realize that this has not just happened to you, it has happened to so many other people.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got 2 minutes to wrap up. A few important messages you want to give to our viewers, to other parents who have children with rare diseases, and the issue around the type of support from people outside of your immediate circle.
Okay, so to parents, other parents who have children with rare diseases, never lose hope. Sometimes it is the darkest hour, and somehow things always fall into place. You know, my biggest challenge was to say, I'm somebody who likes to be in control. And I had to say, walking out of the ICU every day, oh Allah, I leave my child in your hands. And I think when you do that, you take the stress away, and you feel that everything that happens for a reason. And I just never lose hope. Never ever lose hope and never lose faith, as difficult as it can be.
Put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That's it.
And for people outside of the circle, what do you want them to know about these type of situations all around the world?
I want people to become aware and inclusive of children and adults who have differences. And I don't even want to say disabilities or difficulties. I want to say differences, because everybody fights different battles, and these kids fight big battles.
These tiny little
That's it.
human beings.
And they don't need to fight battles that society creates.
Oh, absolutely.
So people need to be more aware of that. Ask questions, be inclusive.
Thank you so very much for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely.
You've spoken from the heart. You've touched me. No doubt you've touched millions of people out there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your du'as.
Ameen.
From your lips to Allah's ears, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you. The lovely Raeesa Bulbulia Cajee sharing her story of her son Zain, who is 2 years old. He suffers from a rare disease called Pompe disease. Please remember Zain and all the sick children all around the world in your du'as, inshallah. Welcome back. We now have Marian Hammon in the studio. She's written a book called As the Crow Flies, but it's not a novel or any such thing. It's all about self-affirmation. She's going to unpack all of that for us in a little while. Marian's not only a writer, she comes from a nursing background, and she's going to share her story with us. Marian, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Now, life happened to you.
Absolutely.
Life's been quite a journey, and it's brought you to this point, to this book called The Crow Flies.
Yeah.
How did you start out in life?
Well, look, I did my matric, and then I went into nursing. I became a qualified sister, and I worked as a nurse for quite a long time. And I got to a point where I thought there must be more about illness. The doctors swoop in and out, and they do their thing, and we need doctors at times.
And they leave all the hard work to the nurses.
But yes, absolutely. And the families. I mean, the families to deal with them when you've got a sick loved one is not easy. And I thought that, you know, illness does come from a psychological base. And it's quite a lot of work to go into that and really heal out. And most people don't want to do that kind of work. So, you know, they go to a doctor and they get better. But, you know, if you go into your soul and work towards healing yourself, you can do a lot to
That's
reach
all
wholeness.
about, you're talking about alternative or natural healing.
Natural healing, yes.
When you talk about going into your soul, I know you also delved in something called soma therapy or color therapy.
Yeah,
Let's go to that space in your life. How did that work out, and how did people buy into that concept?
Well, Orosome is a colour therapy, and it comes from England. Once I went to someone and she did a session with me, and I just thought, wow, this is fantastic. And I flew to England twice to learn more about it, and I even got to a point of teaching it. Because you choose from a whole selection of bottles, you choose 4, and they tell you a lot about you, your strengths, your weaknesses, and then one of the bottles, if you want to, you can apply it onto your body because it contains herbs and natural essences, and that helps with your healing as well. And when you really know what your problem areas are, it becomes easier to heal.
When we talk alternative healing or natural healing, is the emphasis and focus more on the broken person spiritually, mentally, emotionally, or we're talking about...
I think it's all of that. Mm-hmm. We've all had difficult lives. Everyone says my life is fantastic. Some people do have a fantastic life, but we have got issues on the way that we have to heal out and come to terms with.
You've been in this space for a very long time, natural healing. Yeah. Your take on the word happiness, because we're living in a very broken world with a lot of broken souls around us.
A lot.
And everyone's chasing that elusive something called happiness. And maybe at this point in time, I'm very happy sitting here talking with you, interacting with you.
And I'm also happy.
It's a good moment, but we're all carrying stuff with us all the time.
Yes, we are.
How do you respond to people when they say they want peace and happiness in their lives?
Look, happiness comes from loving yourself. And people say, loving myself, how can I love myself? And it's not about loving myself, but knowing who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and working with your weaknesses and focusing on your strengths. And not all of us can do everything, so get people to help you with the things you can't do, and do the things you love.
We have a blind spot as far as our own flaws are concerned.
Yes, we do.
When you're in a relationship, and if it's not a very sound relationship, I think what plays out is finger pointing all the time.
Yes.
Pointing the other person's flaws, and statements like, you make me sick, and you make me cross, and you make me angry because. How does that narrative have to change? Because the change begins with you. Your partner could make you sick and fed up all of the time, but if you don't change, he's not going to change.
In my relationship, where I thought he's responsible for everything, and at some point I stopped and said, I'm responsible for everything. And what he says, what my husband says or does, it's his stuff, it's not mine. And often as women, I think we blame everyone else for, my husband's done this and that. Take responsibility and be responsible for your life. You can't blame everyone else for this one did that, this one did that.
All right, let's go back to soma therapy. How long were you involved in, why have you moved away, or are you still involved in that type of therapy?
Look, I loved Orosoma. It comes from England and the price is quite expensive, and to keep going it's quite expensive to even have a session these days. And then in the middle of it all, I had a son, and then Orosoma wanted you to do courses every year, and I thought, with a small child, I can't run around doing courses, and I did fall away from it, but it's a great therapy, it still is. Is
it something you can pick up on now and continue?
I probably could if I wanted to, but it would cost me quite a lot to get all the bottles. I mean, the bottles are a few £100 each, and they're over 100, I believe, now, and that'll cost me a few hundred, a few thousand.
For a while, you ran a wellness centre.
Yes, I did.
What type of centre was that, and what were you offering there?
Look, it was alternative. So I had a shop where I sold crystals and books, and we had services like tarot readers, astrology, that kind of thing. And we also had a healing area of it, massage, Orosoma. I did the Orosoma, and reflexology. We did all of those things, and it was beautiful. And then I fell pregnant at 40, and I closed it 2 weeks before my child was born.
Okay, so you then did a whole host of different things, tried different things in your life over time, because you're obviously a very creative person.
Yes, I am.
You came from...
And that's where nursing frustrated me too, because I couldn't be creative.
Do you ever regret having left nursing?
No.
How has the nursing practice helped you in where you are today?
Look, I think it taught me to understand people, and I love people, and I do counselling now, to listen to people's stories, to kind of help them grow, and well, I love people, so that's why I went into nursing, because of loving people. But as a nurse, you don't really love the people. You're busy doing all these, handing out pills and blood pressures and all kinds of things, and
The cleaning up.
yes, that too.
Are you a registered counsellor, or are you just a lay counsellor?
I'm a lay counsellor.
So do you do this on a voluntary basis, or do you kind of work with people, and whilst working with them you counsel them as well?
Yes, I do.
Because that's natural healing is all about counselling as well, is it not?
Because I've thought of going into coaching, but I haven't quite got there. Sometimes I think I do a bit of coaching with the clients that I do see.
Right. And after all of this, after life happening to you, you now, you reached a point in your life, and I'm just wondering how important that crossroad was in your life to bring you where you are today, resulting in a book called As the Crow Flies. You got quite sick, you had unbearable pain in your head. Talk to us about that.
Well, I started the book before that, when I still had my centre, so I started it before my child was born. But I did put it into the back of the shelf and bring it out at times. But in 2013, I had a pain in my head. It felt like someone had put a knife into my head. Oh. And I collapsed, and luckily I was taken quite quickly to hospital. They phoned my husband to say, you know, your wife's in hospital. He's going, no. And I was admitted immediately. I was put on morphine drips. I mean, me on morphine, I don't really remember much about that time, but had brain surgery. And a lot of people don't make it. I believe 1 in 4 from an aneurysm survives. And I'm well and healthy today.
So you're one of the lucky ones. You had a clot in your brain.
It's a bleed. A clot is a stroke.
It's a bleed. Okay, there you go.
So I had a 5-hour surgery where they had to put a little stent in to stop the bleed. And I had a wonderful surgeon, and I'm well and healthy today.
Okay, we're going to talk more about how that was almost a life-changing period for you when we come back after the ad break. Okay. Marian Hammon is here talking about her book. It's called As the Crow Flies, and as you can hear, she's had an amazing life. She's going to talk to us about the book in a short while. Marian Hammon is my guest. She's an author, artist, counsellor, and of course a healer. She's in studio with me talking about her book, and it's not a novel at all. It's about introspection, it's about healing, it's about finding yourself, and more importantly, it's about plants and animals as well. Marian, what about plant lovers or animal lovers? What are they going to find in this book that's going to talk to them?
Look, the book does talk about facts about plants and animals, so you'll get a bit of information about a plant and an animal. And people say, but I didn't know this about that animal or that. And yeah, so it does give you some background knowledge about them. And it also talks about the attributes, and I link the energies of the plants and the animals to your attributes. So whatever plant, sometimes you might be drawn to a certain plant, and that talks about you, who are your qualities, and how to move through with the love of the plant or the animal. You can work through certain problem areas. And
the book's pretty unique because you've got a deck of cards there representing an animal and a plant. Yes. And so why would one read this book? Who is it targeted at? And if I got the book, what am I going to do with the book to get information or perhaps a bit of quiet time?
It's more about the quiet time, I believe. You shuffle the cards and you pull a card and it's got a number, and the number corresponds with the chapter in the book. So it's quite easy to find your way around. And then you read that chapter. You might want to do it once a day. If you're going through difficult times, you might want to do it a bit more often. It's really up to how you want to do it.
So it's really about calming you down in a stressful situation, or not, just as a light read. It depends really where your headspace is at that point in time. Now, you talk plants and you talk animals. How much of research did you have to do? Because you needed to get all of the information spot on.
Yes, quite a lot. I've got a big bibliography in the back with quite a lot of references, and I looked at a lot. And it's actually 50, but I've done 100. So this is the first 50, and I'm working on the second 50. I've done most of the research, so it's just about putting it all together. And I've done all the illustrations are done, so it shouldn't take me too long to put the.
Who should read the book?
I think everyone, to help with your healing, to help with your growth, to help to start loving yourself, because to love yourself is the most important thing, and to work with your good qualities and to recognize them. Often we don't. What are your good qualities? Often people don't know the answer to that. And if you can start looking at that and loving those things about yourself.
You spoke plants and animals, and let me just throw this at you. I love lavender. Whenever I walk past a lavender bush, I'll pull off a bit of lavender and just rub it in my hands and smell it, and I just love it. What's that saying to you?
Well, lavender is purple. Purple is about healing. It's often quite a spiritual energy, however your spirituality is for you. And lavender is also a very healing plant. So, yeah, you might have healing qualities. I don't know if you're aware of them or not. And lavender also has sparks that reach to the heavens. So it's almost like your connection to the divine is strong.
Okay, interesting. I'm not quite sure. You know, when people say things to you, you kind of wonder, is that me? Is that not me? I'm not sure.
But you can think about it and make your own decision in time.
If you want to read the book without going to the cards at all, is that possible? What am I going to get out of the book without interacting with the cards?
Look, you learn about plants and animals, and you also learn about yourself. So it is about growth and about putting yourself forward and being all you can be.
I know your heart and soul is in the book.
It is, yeah.
What's the favorite chapter in the book for you, and why?
Oh, I don't know. Each animal's got special qualities. And I love the giraffe. I've always loved giraffes. I don't know why. And they've got that very long neck, so they're a different animal. And their long neck also helps them to reach to the heavens. And yeah.
Your book's very unique in pairing animals and plants together.
Yeah, it is.
Why is that?
Well, it's about nature, so I thought let's bring nature together. And you can get animal cards and books, and you can get plants books and cards. So I thought, let me bring them together and make something different, and I think I have.
Give us a demonstration very quickly. Shuffle the cards. Can you do this for yourself? Can you kind of shuffle the cards?
Yes.
Pick a card, choose a card yourself, and then go to a chapter in the book and read up whatever it says or part of it, and then tell us what that means for you.
Okay. Let's see. Let's pick that one.
And let me just remind our viewers, this has nothing to do with astrology or fortune telling or any such thing. It's just about connectivity to nature, to plants, to animals. And if you're in a dark space, or if you're just, wanting to have a bit of fun and see what kind of space you're in for that moment in time, go to the book and just get a message, an inspirational message out of the book. So I reaffirm here and now, it's got nothing to do with fortune telling or tarot cards or any such thing. It's about plants, animals, and your frame of mind. So over to you. What did you choose?
I chose number 6, the waterbuck and the violet.
Okay. Well, how are they related, the waterbuck and the violet? What's the connection there?
I did this, brought the plants and animals together many years ago, so sometimes I think I don't quite know, but here on the card you've got an affirmation, swift and agile, so that's links to the animal, the first part of the affirmation. And then the violet is hidden beauty, because the violet sits in little with little heart-shaped leaves, and the flowers are very small. So if you look through the heart-shaped leaves, you can see the hidden beauty. And the violet is about love because of the leaves and the beauty that it brings. Each chapter is long-ish. I am working on doing a mini deck, and I hope to have that out.
What's a mini deck?
Where you have the cards with a small book, not a big one like this, because this is quite a big book. And you can put that in your handbag or your office drawer, and you can just get a little message, and it's quite quick to read. So,
do you truly believe that, let's assume you're having a hard day, you know, things are just going hopelessly wrong for you, and you take a card or you just go to the book directly and read whatever jumps out at you? Do you think that you'd feel kind of comforted by doing that?
Absolutely. Because the book is about positive energy, to bring you something positive. I'm not here to break anyone down. I'm hoping to build people up and to be more of who they are.
How have the book sales been going, and what sort of feedback have you got?
Look, the people that have bought them love them, and they come back and say, wow, someone on Easter Day, Easter Friday said, I've just pulled the bunny rabbit. I thought, for Easter, that's quite interesting. And people love it, and they're quite enthusiastic about it. But I need to take it onto a broader market. I probably need to have it at the bigger bookstores, and I haven't got to that yet. But it's in smaller shops at the moment, and I want to get it out a bit more.
So where would the book be available? People watching us this morning may decide, well, that's something that I need to invest in.
Yes.
Keep it at my bedside, and every time I feel a bit down, or if I want my message for the day, that's my go-to place.
Yes.
Where can they get the book from?
Look, they can get it from me, and the Dreamcatcher in Cedar Square, they've got quite a few copies, so you can go there. And I'm often there on a Tuesday afternoon, and if you want it autographed, by all means, with pleasure.
Obviously, with someone like yourself, you're very artistic, you're into natural or alternative healing. Your journey doesn't end here with this book.
No,
what can we hope to see from you in the coming months?
Well, I'm even considering doing workshops or lectures, or I want to build people up, and maybe I need to go into coaching and coach people as well. So, because people don't value themselves properly.
We hear all these fancy terms, coaching and positive self-talk and aspirations, etc. We hear it all the time, and it's almost, we don't know how to do it, or it's not going to work for me because in the back of my mind I still have a bit of self-doubt. How do we break away from that?
You need to make decisions and go forward and love yourself. And we always, I'd love to be an author perhaps. And people dream about these things, but they don't do it. And if you want to do something, make a plan and start and do it.
And that's where we leave it. Let me just one more question. We touched on it earlier on. Lots of people say, love yourself first, don't be so hard on yourself.
Absolutely.
Easier said than done.
Yes, I agree with that.
How do you do it?
It's not easy, but hopefully some of these plants and animals can remind you that we are beautiful.
And you are worthy.
Nature is beautiful, and so are we.
Thank you. We leave it on that beautiful note. Thank you indeed for being with us.
Pleasure.
Marian Hammon telling us to reaffirm ourselves, love ourselves, be surrounded by nature, and see the beauty within yourself and around you. Still to come, OCAR Foundation to talk about an upcoming seminar. And welcome back. I have Zeinoul Cajee in studio with me. He's from the OCAR Foundation, and of course his name, Zeinoul Cajee, and OCAR is synonymous with one another. We're going to talk a little bit about OCAR later on in the show, but right now We are looking at a seminar that is scheduled for the 5th of May 2018. It's the Shariah Estate and Financial Planning Seminar. And of course, the Al-Kal Foundation is promoting this particular seminar. Zeinoul, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah for having me on this program.
Always great to have you guys around to hear what's going down in the community, what's going down with Al-Kal, and what amazing projects you're busy promoting. The Shariah Estate and Financial Planning Seminar comes hot on the heels of another discussion you had here at ITV regarding tax and religious institutions. A very interesting discussion, I might add. How does this seminar tie in with that discussion?
Okay, I think, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, I think that this one here is a little bit different in the sense that it focuses a lot on individuals rather than organizations. The text discussion that we had earlier on had to do with religious institutions that receive donations and how those donations are dealt with and so forth, and how organizations are supposed to be complying with tax laws. So the Shariah estate and financial planning, I think, has to do more with individuals, families, and how they actually plan their lives and how they plan their financial affairs in a way that will actually ensure protection of their surviving heirs, and so to ensure that certain people within their families and so forth that are either Quranic heirs or non-Quranic heirs, that these are kind of adequately catered for. So I think we're looking at a completely different aspect, although taxation does
those implications
yes.
are on the horizon.
Yes, yeah.
Now, obviously, we're not here to talk about the Shariah Estate and Financial Planning Seminar in detail.
Yes.
It's more an awareness
yes.
that we want to create so that people who have an interest in this can sign up and attend. Mm-hmm. So who should be attending?
Well, I think that Shariah estate planning affects everybody. Men, women, professional people, accountants, lawyers, ulama, people that serve in an advisory capacity, to consultants, to I think people that have fairly large estates as well, high net worth individuals, but even simple ordinary people that may just have very little and that may just have a house, the husband and wife, the wife is at home, the husband is at work, the house is on the husband's name. What happens to the wife after he passes on? Those kind of issues. So a lot of households, and I think it actually affects everybody. So, people that should attend are all those categories of people.
Zeinoul, you will admit and agree with me that we here in South Africa and possibly all around in the Western world, Muslims residing in Western countries, live in nuclear family situations. Mm-hmm. So the extended family situation has fallen away. Mm-hmm. And when we look at the Shariah estate and financial planning when the breadwinner or someone passes on, mm-hmm. Are we as Muslims in South Africa and in other Western countries prescribing to Sharia law as far as the dividing up of the estate is concerned? And is it simple enough to do, or are we getting caught up in all the nitty-gritties, and by so doing, half the estate gets eaten away, or the taxman gets a bigger or the biggest chunk of that estate? And again, I say it, I know that the seminar is going to address what I've just raised with you and lots more, but just to throw it out there for people to understand that maybe it's not as simple as we think it is, and maybe we're just not subscribing to Sharia estate and financial planning.
Okay, so I think the first point is that yes, we should be complying with Shariah absolutely in terms of our estate planning. That is the whole point of the seminar. Secondly, we need to understand the kind of implications there are for estate planning. For example, the tax issues like you mentioned. So donations between husband and wife, for example, what are the tax implications of that? Because there's very clear allowances for transfers of property between husband and wife. Then there's issues about near relatives that may be destitute. So although we're living in nuclear families, but at the same time, we also have the extended family that are there
to be considered.
And there may be destitute people in that space as well. So when we're doing that planning, we need to think about that. We also need to think about what can we leave behind as a legacy. And that is where the waqf comes in. And what percentage of our estates can we actually leave behind? So that's another area of concern, and which is actually Sharia compliant. Then there are absolute Quranic heirs. These are prescribed, and there's nothing we can do about it. The only kind of freedom that one has is limited, actually, up to a certain percentage, which will, I think the experts there will elaborate on those kind of issues. So overall, if we have an understanding of the basic principles of the estate planning, we have an understanding also of the context in which how the Sharia estate planning and the Islamic laws of inheritance evolved over between, let's say, pre-Islamic Arabia and then the Islamic era, and how that actually evolved. So we need to have an understanding of that. We need to have an understanding of the underlying objectives of this very important law of inheritance. And what are the kind of underpinnings of this particular law? Who does it actually seek to protect? Who does it seek to address? How does it actually see the whole issue of redistribution of wealth and the considerations of community and welfare and the legacies that we want to leave behind? So when you look at all of that, then actually it's got a very rich, shall I say, embroidery of issues that need to be addressed.
What has happened up to now? In 2018, the 5th of May 2018, we're going to have a whole host of experts, and you're going to tell us who they are and the capacities that they're going to be being part of this panel for the Sharia Estate and Financial Planning Seminar. What happened prior, what has happened and is happening prior to the seminar? Are we suggesting that things haven't been done according to the book up to now?
I think that to a large extent there's ignorance. We tend to look at a standard Islamic will, and we think that that's okay.
Can you elaborate on a standard Islamic will? Because you've just preempted one of my future questions with you, and that is, we have simplified it to that, have we not?
Yes.
A standard Islamic will. I mean, I remember when my husband was going on Hajj, I wasn't going along with him, and he left what could be referred to as a standard Islamic will. And I kind of wondered about that. Alhamdulillah, he came back, in good health, etc. But I'm just wondering about that. Does that still stand and serve the people? The loved ones, once you pass on, does it serve them maximally? And then you also talk about other responsibilities to other relatives and your community. Does it talk to those issues?
I think that is the problem. That the standard Islamic world does not talk to that, because that becomes a very personal issue, and it has to, people have to actually look at their own personal circumstances. They have to look at, for example, do you have a disabled child? Do you have, do you owe one of your children, you've educated, say you've got 3 children, you've educated the 2 children, but you haven't educated the 3rd one. He's a lat lamiki or whatever, or he or she. Is there any provision for the education of that child? Do you, if you're going to treat that as a pure share, in terms of a prescribed share,
equal share,
that may go against the underpinning of justice, and that is something that needs to be looked at from issue of justice, whether you have done justice to that 3rd one.
Okay, let's take an ad break, and you've raised something very, very, very important. The injustice to the uneducated child, or the naughty child, for example, that you're so angry at him for throwing away all of his opportunities that you decide to cut him out of the will, or give him the smaller share of the will, and girl children as well. We'll look at all of that and more, inshallah, after the ad break. Zeinoul Cajee, from the CEO of OCAR Foundation South Africa, is here in studio talking to us about the upcoming seminar, Shariah Estate and Financial Planning, a seminar that's going to happen on the 5th of May 2018. We'll give you all of those details a little later on, and we'll also talk about the dynamic speakers that are going to be at the seminar. But we are also, I wouldn't say digressing, I think it's important to know information which we are sharing with you this morning. So do stay with us. I'm talking to Zeinoul Cajee from OCAR Foundation. We're talking about the upcoming seminar. Zeinoul is going to give us the venue, the costs, and the speakers. It's happening on the 5th of May 2018. So we'll get to that just before we wrap up. And we are talking about the type of issues that are going to be raised at the seminar. So nothing's going to be too trivial or unimportant, or perhaps even un-Islamic to raise at the seminar, because these are the answers we need. Zeinoul, before the ad break, we were talking about the errant child, where dad is so fed up and just cuts him out of the will, or give him the smallest portion of the will. According to Shariah, wrong, right?
Okay, I'm not gonna give you an answer to that.
Go to the seminar.
I think yes, those type of questions should be addressed to experts there. But suffice to say that there are certain prescribed airs, and those prescribed airs cannot be omitted. So if that is maybe in part answering your question, but we are concerned with some special cases where, for example, an injustice has been done to some of the children, or one of the children, where the education hasn't been provided for adequately. Or, for example, you may have a child with cerebral palsy, a child that is disabled. If you go strictly by...
Or a chronic disease.
Yes, and that child needs special care and needs special attention. How is that child being taken care of through a Sharia compliant will?
I think the other very big issue that's going to come up at the seminar, and I think we're throwing out teasers for now as far as this is concerned, is the issue with second wives, subsequent wives, and let's assume your wife passes on and you remarry, and the children from the first marriage opposes the inheritance for that second or subsequent wife. I think that's a very big problem in our community right now.
What you've raised is actually, I think, the kaleidoscope of issues that are
going to be unpacked.
Because it's every person has got a very personal set of circumstances. Either mother has passed away, or they've got brothers and sisters, or they're only daughters and no brothers, and father has passed away. So there's other family members that are entitled to inherit. All of those things.
Or perhaps I'm a girl child and I worked in the family business all my life. Now my parents or my father has passed away, and he's left a very small portion of...
he's left a standard Islamic will.
And I then dispute that, because I believe I was part of the business all my life. So those are the type of issues that are going to be unpacked.
Absolutely, because surely the woman or the wife or the daughter that has contributed to the business has a legitimate right right in terms of her share of the business. So upon death, she may have her normal Quranic right, but she also has the estate also has a debt in her favor.
Okay.
That the estate owes her something in terms of her contribution and so forth. So, but those things need to be addressed while the parents are alive, or the husband is alive, or the wife is alive. So in today's times, the wife may be the chief breadwinner. You know, I mean,
then how do you carve up that estate?
Absolutely.
I sincerely hope that this seminar is going to be televised and it's going to go out live to ITV viewers, because I think it is so important. There's such a lot of information that we as a Muslim ummah
you better
need.
talk to your to ITV executives.
That, and also that we want to make it as tax friendly as we possibly can for all of us, because yes, we live in South Africa, yes, we pay our taxes, but we also don't want to be paying taxes for the rest of our lives. And yes, we want to leave a sizable estate for our loved ones without tax taking, estate tax taking X amount or a big portion of the estate. So, which means that we, you know, as the family, kind of lose out in the interim.
Yeah, actually, that's also another important question. When the main breadwinner passes away, immediately there's a cash problem.
Because everything's frozen.
Yeah, immediately you need access to funds to carry you through, maybe through your iddah period or whatever. So, are we making provision for that? Now there are actually new products on the market as well, takaful and otherwise. That
so you can engage in to make the provisions.
Yes, absolutely. But unless you are aware of these things, you won't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zeinoul, tell us about these amazing people that are going to be running the seminar. Who are they? What are they going to talk to us about? Where is it happening? What does it cost, and who should attend?
Okay, so we've got Maulana Yusuf Patel, who's a very senior alim from the United Ulama Council of South Africa. He's also connected to the Jamiatul Ulama here in Jamiatul Ulama South Africa. And he will be talking firstly about the context of the whole issue of Islamic inheritance and its evolution, pre-Islamic Arabia and then the Islamic era. He will also be talking about case studies that he has actually encountered during his work experience, of a lot of people actually come to him with specific problems and issues and so forth. So what are those kind of cases? What do we see happening on the ground? Then you've got Sheikh Shuaib Umar, who's an attorney, and he will be talking about the higher objectives of the Sharia in terms of how it actually connects to Sharia estate planning. He will talk about that. He'll also talk about the introduction to Islamic inheritance, probably around what the kind of divisions are, Quranic heirs, non-Quranic heirs, all of that. Then you have Sheikh Abdul Samad Abdul Qadir. His main topic will be about the problems regarding standard Islamic wills. Also a man with tremendous experience Islamic scholar, Islamic researcher, and he's been on the landscape for a very long time, and he's produced some wonderful work as well. And I think he's got quite a contribution to make in this regard. Then you have Muhammad Saluji, who's the tax expert, who will be talking about like your tax implications on issues around making donations, leaving legacies, donations between husband and wife, what sort of allowances you are allowed in terms of your estate. So to make it as tax effective and tax compliant as well at the same time. Then, of course, we will talk about Shuaib Umar, attorney Shuaib Umar, Sheikh Shuaib Umar, who's also a Sharia advisor to many Islamic banking institutions and financial institutions. He'll also talk about the issue about waqf and how waqf actually fits into your estate planning.
And that's something very close to your heart.
Yes, absolutely.
I see the moderators are Ashraf Isup, Yusha Tayyib, and then Shaukat Faiki.
Yes.
Where is this happening?
Okay, this will happen at the Menkoza College that is based in Auckland Park in Johannesburg. There's the Ahmed Kathrada Auditorium within that building, so it will be held in there. It will be held on the 5th of May 2018. And it's actually a Saturday morning, and it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning to about 1 o'clock.
And the fee, registration fee is 500 Rand, and that's where we come to the end of the program for this morning. Any final important thoughts you'd like to share with the viewers?
Well, I think that as many people as possible, our target audience are ulama, accountants, lawyers, housewives, business people, high net worth individuals, professional people, educators, anybody that is, that has assets and that are concerned about their kind of estates and so forth. I think it will be vital for them to actually attend this program. We will be having a similar program in Durban and Cape Town. So we haven't got dates and times and venues and all of that for those. But inshallah, after Ramadan, this is really just before the beginning of Ramadan as well. So where a lot of people do some financial planning as well.
Absolutely.
So this will be a very appropriate time for people to actually reflect on their own situations and come up with solutions. And I think part of the whole idea of the seminar is to actually train people with certain skills that they may actually be able to impart when they are advising other people. So, I mean, in any family, you need people that are there to help you, to advise you.
Absolutely, and that's where we leave it. Yeah. And inshallah, continue the amazing work at Awqaf Foundation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for it.
Ameen. Jazakallah khairan.
And that brings us to the end of the show this morning. Do diarise that date, 5th of May 2018. It's happening here in Johannesburg at Menkoza, the Ahmed Kathrada Auditorium, and it's a mere 500 Rand registration fee. And we do hope to see you there, inshallah. Till the next time, as always, a big thank you to the production team. And it is Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.